Greetings. I want to talk about the warnings in the Gospels regarding the end times. The prophet Daniel prophesied that the Messiah would be coming into the world soon after the Seleucid Empire ended. Soon after the Messiah arrived, it would be Judgment Day for Judea. The northern kingdom of Israel has already been judged in 720 BC. Assyria drove the 10 tribes of Israel out of their homeland and brought in a new population to inhabit their land. Jesus Christ was born into the world 50 years after the conquest of Seleucia. The greatest evidence that Judea was about to be judged by God was the presence of John the Baptist. The book of Malachi prophesied that God would send Elijah back into the world to help prepare Judea for the judgment. Malachi chapter 3, verse 23 through 24. Now I am sending to you Elijah the prophet before the day of the Lord comes, the great and terrible day. He will turn the hearts of fathers to their sons. Elijah never died. He was taken up into heaven in a fiery chariot, in a whirlwind. 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 11. As they walked on conversing, a fiery chariot and fiery horses came between the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Jesus tells us in Matthew, Mark, and Luke that John the Baptist was Elijah. Matthew chapter 17, verses 10 through 13. Then the disciples asked him, "Why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?" He said in reply, "Elijah will indeed come first and restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they pleased. So also will the Son of Man suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them of John the Baptist. According to Jesus' testimony about him, Elijah was born into the world as John the Baptist. Another sign Jesus gives that Judea's judgment day was imminent is his cursing of the fig tree. Mark chapter 11, verses 12 through 14. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, he was hungry. Seeing from a distance a fig tree in leaf, he went over to see if he could find anything on it. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves. It was not the time for figs. And he said to it in reply, "May no one ever eat of your fruit again." And his disciples heard it. Mark chapter 11, verses 20 through 21. Early in the morning, as they were walking along, they saw the fig tree withered to its roots. Peter remembered and said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered." In this sign, the fig tree represents Judea. The Messiah came to Judea at a time that people were not expecting. This is indicated by the fact that when Jesus went to the tree for figs, it was not the season for figs. The people of Judea were unprepared for the judgment of God. Like the fig tree, Judea was condemned and destroyed. History shows that Judea came to an end no later than the early 2nd century, less than a century after this sign. In the End Times Prophecy of Luke, Jesus tells his disciples about Judgment Day. Luke chapter 21, verses 5 through 28. While some people were speaking about how the temple was adorned with costly stones and votive offerings, he said, "All that you see here, the days will come when there will not be left a stone upon another stone that will not be thrown down." Then they asked him, "Teacher, when will this happen? And what signs will there be when all these things are about to happen?" He answered, "See that you not be deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and the time has come. Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified, for such things must happen first, but it will not immediately be the end." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be powerful earthquakes, famines, and plagues from place to place, and awesome sights and mighty signs will come from the sky." Before all this happens, however, they will seize and persecute you. They will hand you over to the synagogues and to prisons, and they will have you led before kings and governors because of my name. It will lead you to giving testimony. Remember, you are not to prepare your defense beforehand, for I myself shall give you a wisdom in speaking that all your adversaries will be powerless to resist or refute. You will even be handed over by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and they will put some of you to death. You will be hated by all because of my name, but not a hair on your head will be destroyed. By your perseverance, you will secure your lives. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, know that its desolation is at hand. Those in Judea must flee to the mountains. Let those within the city escape from it, and let those in the countryside not enter the city. For these days are the time of punishment, when all the scriptures are fulfilled. Woe to pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days, for a terrible calamity will come upon the earth, and a wrathful judgment upon this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be taken as captives to all the Gentiles, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. This part of the prophecy clearly describes events that took place in the first century. The Acts of the Apostles and other early Christian writings testify to the trials, persecutions, and martyrdom of the apostles and disciples. The last part of the prophecy ends with the second coming of the Lord and the judgment of the world. There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will die of fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these things begin to happen, stand erect and raise your heads, because your redemption is at hand. The Gospels of Matthew and Mark have end times warnings that are similar but different from Luke. In Matthew chapter 24 it says, "When you see the desolating abomination spoken of through Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. A person on the housetop must not go down to get things out of his house. A person in the field must not return to get his cloak. Woe to pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days." The desecration and destruction of the temple was fulfilled around 70 AD. By some accounts, the temple was desecrated by the Romans exactly the same way it was desecrated by Antiochus IV over 200 years before, by placing a statue of Zeus in the temple. It seems as if the writer combined the judgment of Judea and the judgment of the world into one judgment. Because the prophecy ends with the second coming of Jesus Christ, many Christians believe that the entire prophecy refers to the judgment of the world at the end of the age. Jesus warned the church that the judgment of God went beyond punishing the nation in the world, that God would judge each soul in the afterlife. To emphasize this, Jesus told the story of Lazarus and the rich man. Luke chapter 16, verses 19 through 31. There was a rich man who dressed in purple garments and fine linen and dined sumptuously each day. And lying at his door was a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who would gladly have eaten his fill of the scraps that fell from the rich man's table. Dogs even used to come and lick his sores. When the poor man died, he was carried away by angels to the bosom of Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. And from the netherworld, where he was in torment, he raised his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. And he cried out, "Father Abraham, have pity on me. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am suffering torment in these flames." Abraham replied, "My child, remember that you received what was good during your lifetime, while Lazarus likewise received what was bad. But now he is comforted here, whereas you are tormented. Moreover, between us and you, a great chasm is established to prevent anyone from crossing who might wish to go from our side to yours, or from your side to ours." He said, "Then I beg you, Father, send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, lest they too come to this place of torment. But Abraham replied, They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them. He said, Oh no, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent. Then Abraham said, If they will not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded if someone should rise from the dead. In fact, someone did return from the dead, and they still won't listen. The judgment of Judea was not just the judgment of the generation that lived in the time of Jesus. It was the judgment of Israel from Abraham until that last generation. Through every generation, God was choosing eternal citizens for his nation, a nation of priests. As Jesus said, many are called, few are chosen. Those who were not chosen, presumably, would be citizens of different nations at the resurrection. After God's judgment of Israel, their number cannot be added to or subtracted from. Jesus told a different story about the judgment of the world and the story of the weeds and the wheat. Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 through 30. He proposed another parable to them. The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a man who sowed good seed in his field. While everyone was asleep, his enemy came and sowed weeds all through the wheat, and then went off. When the crop grew and bore fruit, the weeds appeared as well. The slaves of the householder came to him and said, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where have the weeds come from? He answered, An enemy has done this. His slaves said to him, Do you want us to go and pull them up? He replied, No. If you pull up the weeds, you might uproot the wheat along with them. Let them grow together until harvest. Then at the harvest time, I will say to the harvesters, First collect the weeds and tie them in bundles for burning, but gather the wheat into my barn. The wicked will live in the flesh forever in Gehenna, far from the earth, where their worm dies not and the fire is not quenched. Besides preparing Judea for their judgment, the mission of the Messiah was to establish the eternal kingdom of God. This he did by teaching the people about God and how God wanted them to live. Jesus was then sacrificed for the sins of many, rose from the dead, and ascended into heaven. My next video will be on the prophecies of the popes. Thank you.